So kia ora, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this Global Women webinar. And this is our lunchtime event. It was supposed to be an in-person event in Tamaki Makaurau, but as we know, the universe had other plans. But one of the advantages of it moving to online is that we've opened it up for people beyond Auckland. So welcome to all of those who are joining today. Online, there will be Global Women members, there will be alumni from Global Women Leadership Development Programs, and there are some Chief People Officers from our partners and Champions of Change. So welcome one and all. So the format for today is I'm going to ask each of our wonderful panelists to speak for about 8 minutes on their journey and their passion, in particular in support of other women, and if they are a Global Women member, what the organisation means to them. And while they're doing that, I'd like you to send questions through. I've got questions sorted, which I can lead the questions, but I'd much rather get engagement with 100 or so women who are already on this call and over 200 registered. So I think more will be coming and going over this hour and a half. So please post your questions onto chat. And as soon as we have finished everyone speaking about their own journey, then we will move to Q&A. Okay, well, without further ado, I'm going to start with my very dear friend, Cecilia Robinson. And look, I'm in equal parts respect, admire, and love Cecilia. She is an amazing woman. In particular, she is such a successful entrepreneur, but at the same time, such a loving human being. And those are the qualities that we both want, that we all want, of course, to be successful, but to be our best selves. So Celia will be probably better known to all of you as the co-founder and co-CEO of My Food Bag, which of course was one of the most successful New Zealand startups of the last decade. She's a serial entrepreneur. Before that, she successfully started O'Peeling with her husband, James Robinson. And following our sell down to Waterman Capital of My Food Bag, Celia and James went on to set up Tend Health. And if you thought that My Food Bag was a big thing to take on, then wait till you hear Celia talk about Tend. It is nothing short of trying to revolutionise healthcare in New Zealand for the benefit of all of us. Celia's won many awards, Supreme winner at the Women of Influence Awards in 2017, EY Young Entrepreneur of the Year, Next Entrepreneur Award winner, and probably others that I haven't even, thought to mention. She's been recognised, but she can't really be recognised enough for her trailblazing leadership. And so, Cecilia, please, the floor is yours.
Kia ora, everyone. Now, I'm just going to actually just make a caveat here immediately because my amazing husband is just removing our beautiful newborn baby for his sleep. He's 8 weeks old. So there you go, you can wave, darling. Teamwork makes the dream work, eh? So yeah, that's a very authentic view of what it's like in the Robinson family right now. While, a lot of people, I guess, have an understanding of who we are from our businesses that we've run or that we currently run, our biggest passion in life and our most significant successes are beautiful children that we now have 3 of. So I've got 9-year-old Thomas, 5-year-old Layla, and Charlie, who is just 8 weeks old. So that's a little bit about us. We've been homeschooling children, so empathy out there for everyone who's been homeschooling children over the last 100+ day or so in Auckland. Our children are finally back at school today for 2 days and 8 days in total in the lead up to Christmas, and that's been a huge challenge. So a significant amount of aroha to everyone out there who has been struggling with the juggle, because we certainly have been as well. A little bit about me that Theresa so generously covered. First of all, I love Theresa a huge amount. I'd always say that she probably is a person who knows James and I better than anyone else in the whole wide world. She knows how we work together, she knows how we function, and she knows what makes us tick. And we're really privileged to have someone so close to us, both on our personal journey and our business journey, who knows us so well. So thank you for that, T. I guess a little bit about me, you'll know, some of you might know that I'm originally from Sweden. So I came to New Zealand when I was 21. I just said this morning that I've been with my husband for the past 16 years today. And that is how long I've been in New Zealand as well, approximately. It's about 16 years now. So I well and truly feel like a Kiwi. When I first came to New Zealand, I'd been an au pair in America. And I came to New Zealand thinking that, I actually wanted to be an au pair here, but there was no reputable organization at that point. And so I decided to found one. And so I always go about saying that our entrepreneurial journey was quite accidental. Nowadays, young kids, they do young enterprise programs. A lot of people talk about business, they encourage business. But when I was growing up in Sweden, that was not something that was talked about. Entrepreneurship wasn't really a career path. So it was quite a huge, random journey at the time. My parents always saw me being a lawyer. I had really good grades. I'd worked really hard for that. I was ambitious, and were quite shocked and probably a smidgen disappointed at the fact that I decided to kind of go set up a business at the time, but also obviously excited for us and the opportunities that might bring. We had Au Pair Link. We sold in 2014. It was a really interesting journey. We learned so much, and I can look at our journey now and see that we've really been on this path for personal growth, business experience, widening our sector skill sets. And everyone kind of goes, you went from education to food to healthcare. It's a really random journey, right? But our skill set is problem solving, and it's entrepreneurship and driving change and really focusing on making things happen, right? And when we were having our first child, Thomas, is when my food bag was born at the same time. Thomas was 4 weeks old when we presented it to the Au Pair Link board, the concept for my food bag, and we were in market with my food bag 6 months later. As Theresa described, we ran my food bag as CEOs for, gosh, it must have been 7 years, and sold to Waterman Capital, and that was a really interesting journey. Pre-IPO this year, we resigned as directors and have been focusing on Tend ever since. So Tend is our startup. We've been working on it since the early days of 2019. James always pokes me and says I shouldn't say it's a startup anymore, but we kind of are. We're only 12 months into operation. Our journey and our focus is to make New Zealanders the healthiest people in the world. It is the biggest challenge that I've ever taken on in my life. It's the most exciting challenge. It's the most inspirational challenge. We are focusing on building, a 100-year business with a 10-year strategy. And that's not something that I've, had as much, it hasn't been as well defined for me before, because what we've realized is patients in the healthcare system and raising our children is that ultimately, our children don't deserve to inherit our healthcare system. It is so broken. It is more broken than what you as a patient would ever imagine. And every part of it is fragmented, whether you talk about technology or people or setup, it's all, it all needs support. It needs to be resolved. And for me, it's the most important journey that we've ever gone on. And James and I committed to this for the rest of our lives. We're here, this is what our journey is. And everything that we did before this built towards Tend. The skill sets that we had inside Au Pair Link grounded us for my food bag, and my food bag has done a huge job in grounding us for Tend. So really excited about the journey that we're on, excited about the people that we're surrounding ourselves and with this humongous challenge of resolving our healthcare system. And we're doing that not just for a virtual platform, which is our app that we have. We've also gone into physical infrastructure and have got several clinics throughout Auckland. And I've been really public in saying that when we raised $50 million last year, that we're not just an online, doctor service. We are integrated healthcare. We want to take care of everybody in the healthcare system. So, that journey for us has meant that we've acquired practices. We've been really articulate about the fact that we want to move into pharmacy, because we think that, medicine and compliance of medicine is one of the biggest issues that we see in our healthcare system that can be resolved. So really excited to be here. A big thank you for having me, and really excited about hearing some of our other participants speaking. Carmen, who's one of my very good friends, Rebecca, Rhonda, it's lovely to see everyone in you as well, T. So I'm not sure how I did for time. I got quite distracted by the baby, so I'm not sure when I started speaking. But yeah, that's me.
You did very well for time, Cecilia. 7 minutes. Perfect. A bit short, actually. You could have gone for a bit longer.
That's so shocking, actually.
I thought you might say that. Remember, please send your questions through either for one or all of the panelists as they're speaking. Okay. Thank you so much, Celia, and thank you so much for doing this with Charlie being still such a wee thing and needing your support. Okay, now we're going to turn to another woman who's been a trailblazer, and I want to just quickly introduce Rhonda Kite, who's joining us today from up north. Rhonda, I first met Rhonda through Company of Women, would have been 6 or 7 years ago now, and she kind of came and visited me when I was in Auckland, my first house in Auckland, when I'd broken my leg and I was not able to go anywhere. But I met some amazing people in that time because, you know sometimes in your life when you've actually got time. And so I reached out to people. I said, I'd like to meet you. If you can come round to Eldon Road, I can meet you. And so that's when I met Rhonda. And I was really blown away then that I hadn't realised that we had someone like that already working to tell the stories in such a powerful way of our Indigenous people and doing that so successfully overseas as well. So Rhonda is an award-winning television producer. She was also quite quick to move to digital format, so she's skilled in both old technology and new technology, and more recently has become, well, I don't want to say expert because I'm not sure how long it takes to become an expert, but has become experienced in iwi governance as the first woman to chair Te Opori. So Rhonda, please share your journey with us.
Kia ora. Ngā mihi nui ki a koutou katoa. Ko Rhonda Kite tōku ingoa. No uri o Te Aupori, Ngāti Kuri, no Nai Takato hoki. Welcome. A little bit nerve-wracking this is, but here you go. Okay, so my story. So I'm a storyteller, right? So I can't help myself. I don't answer questions with a yes or a no. I have to tell a story about it. And that's my business. And I've been reflecting on my story since Agnes got hold of me and asked if I would do this and started trying to make sense of it all. So this week is my birthday week, and on Friday I'll be 68. I have one daughter, and my return on investment is 6 grandies and 4 great grandies. So not bad. Not bad.
That's pretty good.
That's pretty good. My story, you know, I was always different. I was always different. You know, I was born with my head in the clouds, a third child of 9. Even my mother wasn't ready for me. So I had to, you know, I took on taking care of her. But what I did do is that I taught myself to make my own way. You know, in New Zealand, it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because you grow up Indigenous, you grow up mainstream. I don't even know the other word for it. But growing up mixed race is a different journey, and that's been my journey. And my experience is that I've been too brown to be white and too white to be brown. And this is on both sides, both sides. So when you think that, you know, when you hear the rhetoric about, you know, the deprivation of colonization, you hear that, but right behind it is the other side as well. And so, you know, I grew up with chants as a child, you know, of the 50s, you know, half caste, quarter caste, stick your finger. And I remember my little sister coming home. My father told me this. My father's from Islington in London, and my mum was from the far north. And he tells me about how my sister came home one day and said, "What's a Maori? Am I a Maori?" And Dad says, "Yeah." She says, "Well, they sent me home. My friend's parents sent me home because I'm Maori." So, you know, that's the juxtaposition, if you like, of the culture set of this country. It hasn't changed. I'm always hopeful that, you know, it will, and I believe that it will. And what I'm doing now is playing my part in some way of playing a role in that. So what I've also learned about myself is that I appreciate that there were obstacles in my way. So I was always solution orientated, right? So I learned to live with and counter for being dyslexic and ADHD. ADHD didn't exist in the 60s. So my journey has been difficult, but, you know, not for me, because you pivot, you learn to pivot. And as an entrepreneur, that is actually worked for me. You know, so let's go here. Oh, no, that's not going to work. Boom, change, you know, and that's okay. and that's okay. I walked out of school at 15 years of age from Otara College, and so I never really had an education per se, no, certainly not a tertiary education. And now, today, I'm a key player in part of the biggest education reform in Aotearoa in 30 years. The only letters I've got after my name were bestowed on me by Queen Elizabeth as an officer of the New Zealand Order of Merit for my contribution to technology in the film and television sector. I've worked in corporates, but my style didn't work there. I couldn't grow. I couldn't follow my own lead. You know, I had to make my own mistakes, and you're not allowed to do that in corporate. So some say that, you know, 2 years before a milestone birthday, the changes that you make are going to be lifelong changes. So when I was 38, I walked out of a corporate job. I wasn't a qualified accountant, but in those days you were able to be called an accountant. And I just had a memory for numbers. I still do. So that was my job. And I bought into a recording studio. I knew nothing about the business. But I figured if I could account for pats of butter, then I can account for studio time. So very naively, that's what I did. 18 months later, I bought my business partner out, and I had pivoted the business into digital. And that's where I fell in love with the technology of storytelling through sound. Much to the frustration of my husband, because I can't watch a movie without making comments about sync sound or something. He's like, just watch the movie, woman. You know, stop commenting. So now I'm in iwi politics. So why am I there? I have no freaking idea. It wasn't a career move for me. You know, I just spent 5 years in the United Emirates, starting up a little education technology business there. And we came home, and I was looking at, you know, what are we going to do? You know, my company is Kiwa Digital, and we're still doing our dubbing software, etc., working in that sector. And then I think I got a calling, and I just followed that calling. And I believe to this day that it was my mother calling out to me to go home and help our people. So now I'm in governance, and I suck at it because I'm a dictator. I'm not used to asking permission. So, but for all of that, we're making really good grounds up here in the far north. And that's pretty much me, really. So I'm living here in Manganui with my husband, who's a retired sports broadcaster and a journalist. And if there's any one thing that I can leave you with, if I think about, you know, what I can share with you is to be an entrepreneur, you need to be brave. Be brave. Kia ora.
Thank you very much. Okay, now turning to Rebecca Percasky, who I can see her handle on the screen says Bex. Most people who know her call her Bex. And I first met Bex a few years ago when she became one of the winners of SheEO for the 18-19 year. And that was when I first heard about her amazing company, Better Packaging. And Better Packaging has been, that's her second, like Celia, she's a serial entrepreneur. That's her second entrepreneurial setup, and it's absolutely going gangbusters here and overseas. It's so of the moment. And more latterly, she shifted gear again within Better Packaging to not just make the world no worse than she found it, but to actively make it better. So Bex, over to you to share your journey.
Thank you. Carmen, I'll try to keep it short. I've got a line in the sand. And look, I really loved hearing both those stories. So inspiring, and hearing about the problem solving from Cecilia, because in the startup culture, it's all about solving problems. I'm one of the co-founders of the Better Packaging Co, and we're using packaging as a force for good to eradicate pollution, poverty, and also combat global warming. 2 years ago, well, after 2 years in 2018, we launched the Better Packaging Co, and we started selling a home compostable courier satchel in July of that year. That first run sold out within 2 weeks, so we doubled it, and then that sold out within 2 weeks. And we've been literally hanging on for dear life ever since. Today we have some really well-known brands like L'Oreal, Cartier, all the way through to small Etsy sellers that you've probably never heard of. But across the board, the brands that we're working with all want to make their supply chains more sustainable, and we're trying to make it super easy for them to do so. We find that our customers and their customers are actually posting about our products on social media because everyone's looking for change. And so we kind of joke that we've become the first Insta-worthy courier satchel. The product that we launched 4 years ago was a home compostable. We researched it using the Ellen MacArthur circular economy model, where resources are kept in play and everything has a value. But prior to all of this, I was involved, as Theresa mentioned, in Starship It, which is a tech company. I was one of the co-founders there that facilitates the transaction of millions of e-commerce orders every year. And that's a really small fraction of the 80 billion parcels, and this number's probably gone up in the last couple of months alone, that get sent every year. And it was while I was watching this extraordinary growth, which is incredible, that it started to dawn on me that there was a huge amount of additional packaging waste associated with it. 1/3 of everything that all of the food, 1/3 of the food in the world rots. 95% of what we have is trashed within sort of 6 months. And those numbers, the UN has just released a report on plastic pollution, that our oceans, the pollution in it could double by 2050. And numbers like that just sat really heavily on me back in those days. And I think a big part of that was the way that I was brought up. I had quite an unusual upbringing in that my parents, when I was 2, took me and my brothers and sisters and I overseas, and we travelled the world in a motorhome making and selling jewellery. And I don't know if any of you have spent any time in those places, but we were there for 4 years and there's not a lot of room in them. So we didn't have any space for any stuff. And if we did have anything, it was absolutely what was needed. So I really got, I suppose, a foundation of appreciating what you have and that you don't need a lot of stuff to be happy was laid really early on. But like all of us, I got caught up in the world and kind of this consumerism, that sort of wheel that we're all on, and I fell into the trap of sort of collecting a lot of stuff, but never shaking that feeling that there's a better way to live. And what really inspired me to act and do something to make some impact was my daughter at the time was 6 or 7, and she chose to do her school project on what she called Saving the World. And she did this beautiful PowerPoint presentation, which I actually dug out a couple of months ago, and she recorded herself. And there's this little 6-year-old voice saying, "Don't cut down trees, it's bad." And it still does makes me a bit emotional thinking about it. It just got me. And I knew I had to act because here was my precious little thing that I loved more than anything. And she's 6 and she's worried about this huge issue that we'd created. And I literally sat up that night and wrote a list of 5 things that I could do to make change. And where I really thought I'd go in the beginning was I was going to sort of have these 5 projects and just get all the mums at school and all the people with time on their hands and get together and create this really amazing community of women working on making change. And I started working on the first, which was a sustainable courier satchel, and that's fast forward 4, 5, 6 years, and we've sold over 60 million bags, which is a number we're incredibly proud of. We've sold into 52 countries. We've got warehousing in 6 locations, 20,000 customers, and suppliers all around the world. So we've really created this global brand. But in our constant striving to do better and make more sustainable products, last year I had this sleepless night where I really felt that I was just a part of the problem, and Kate and I are always talking about how can we do better, and we need to be doing more, and what we're doing is not enough. And we had this really incredible session where we said, right, let's just wipe the slate clean, and if we were starting again and we have all the money and all the resources in the world, what would we create and what would we bring to market? And this is one of my favourite sessions that I've had. And where we landed up was, there's enough resources in the world. Why don't we harvest this mess that we've created? Why don't we use pollution and create packaging out of it. And so we set out to do that, and I'm really excited to announce. And I think when I spoke at the last event, we were hinting that we had something in the works, and we've recently launched it. And it's plastic, which we are making packaging out of ocean-bound pollution, plastic pollution. So we're working with communities in Southeast Asia and paying them a fair wage to collect the pollution from their waterways and their beaches. And we're converting that into packaging, getting it back into loop. And because we see poverty and pollution so tightly linked, we really believe that we need to solve both of those together. And it really is the circular solution. So not only do we want to create a waste-free world, or what we've really done and transitioned from, and it's been quite a big shift for us, and it may seem like a small shift to people, but where we started from was we want to reduce the impacts of packaging. We want to make it less bad. Where we're ending up now is we're saying, let's use packaging to make the world better. Let's use it to eradicate poverty, to help fight poverty, to help fight pollution, to help fight global warming. And there's a real shift in that from let's not just do less bad, but let's do a whole heap of good. And it's really neat because it also delivers on 14 the UN Sustainable Development Goals. We're a values-led business, and sustainability is at the core of that. But we realised really early on that we can't do this alone. We've really had to lean into our networks like NZTA have been incredible, Cartier Women's Initiative, Global Women, and then of course CEO, who's been with us from the onset. And the thing I love about those networks is they've really given us the space to stay true to our values and take that time last year to go, we've got this great business, but we can make it better because we've been given that space. And I feel really lucky and privileged that I have that opportunity, and I knew that I could ask for help, but I just know that so many other women don't. It took me to be running an impact business to actually almost use it as an excuse to ask for help. Whereas I really think we need to be helping empower people, and women especially, to reach out to those networks. And I think that's why sessions like this are just so important, is to start that conversation, because it does take all of us. I've never been more excited about this business and the potential that we can make to make impact, and that real shift from doing less bad to doing more good. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bex. And it was remiss of me at the start not to mention that Rebecca earlier this year became the first Kiwi woman ever honoured to be a Cartier Women's Initiative winner. So you're doing us all proud. Okay, and last but definitely not least, another entrepreneurial powerhouse for the last 20 years with, like Celia, not just one, but two amazing global startups. And she's actually got them running at the same time. She didn't sell one and then start the other. She's doing them both, as well as having several children. Velocity, all of you probably like me look up the value of your houses, are buying and selling at different times in your life cycle. Well, behind all of that is Carmen's business. She saw quite early on that it needed to be streamlined, this whole process of providing a platform to link lenders, valuers, etc. And so Velocity is powering a lot of what's going on in New Zealand and globally in this space. She's had several international awards for her work in this area. And then if that wasn't enough, she set up Data Insight to take a broader perspective on how data could be used by large companies. So Carmen, thank you so much for being with us today, and the floor is yours.
Thanks, TG, and what an honour, and what a tough act to follow with those amazing ladies before me. So yeah, just incredible, and really honoured to be here with all of you guys, and especially with TG and Sec, who I think we'll all agree are legends and powerhouses in really leading the way and trailblazing. So yeah, I guess a little bit of my background. I worked for a corporate for about 10 years. I had a great job. I made lots of money. I worked from home. I had 4 babies along the way, and I had flexibility. A little bit like Rhonda said, I wasn't very manageable, so I pretty much kind of ran it entrepreneurial. No one saw me. I exceeded my targets, and it was very happy-go-lucky. But after 10 years, I really saw the opportunity to innovate, and no one was doing what I wanted to be doing with data and technology, and I could see things were broken. And if you think of how we live our lives as customers, we expect things to be easy, we expect them to be seamless, we expect them to be relevant and frictionless, and you can only do that with data and technology. technology. And that's what makes me so exciting. So there was no one that I wanted to go and work for. And so I resigned. And as I say, I was the income earner because data and tech don't wait while you go on maternity leave. So I've been incredibly lucky to have the most amazing man behind me. As Cecilia says, it's teamwork makes the dream work, and I couldn't do what I do without him. And so, you know, he, even though I was the income earner, said, yep, go and you've always wanted to do this, go and be an entrepreneur and start on your own. And everyone thought I was crazy when I said I'm going to digitally transform the valuation process and connect brokers and lenders and valuers and make this totally seamless and fix it around the world. And I had no data and no team and no tech, so they all thought I was crazy to start with, but I thought I'd gone totally off the deep end to give up my very well-paying corporate job and take such a big risk. And I guess for the first few months, it was incredibly challenging. I learned my first lesson. If it's going to be, it's up to me, because I was on my own. I didn't go and raise. And I really learned the hard way how much a monopoly would battle to stop me from starting. So I couldn't actually start my business and had to have a few battles to start. And then, a long story short, got a public apology and a confidential settlement, and I could start finally. So I started Data Insight because while I was building Velocity, I could just see so many large businesses had lots and lots of data, but no insight, and didn't really know how to use that data to have a better customer experience. And nothing will drive you more than when you are the income earner with 4 children and you haven't been able to earn income for 10 months. So in my first quarter, I blew the first business case away and invoiced $1 million. And, you know, that focus and that drive, when you're actually, you know, working, you know, and it's up to you to deliver on this, and you're taking such a big chance, is really, that focus really makes you execute better than ever before. And so I built Velocity, and, you know, we had to overcome a whole lot of challenges. That I was outsourcing the tech and they didn't have anything. I had to unlock the data in New Zealand. No one had ever got nationwide property data to be able to do this. And, you know, really learned a lot of lessons that success is not a straight line. So we launched Velocity, and we won our first bank as we went live. So it was a dream come true. And even my advisory board at the time didn't think they could say yes, because this is business critical. It's cloud, it's transformative. They're relying on us for billions of dollars. And I'm going, it's new, it's innovation. No one's used it before. And so we really proved that actually they couldn't say no. And we had to make it so amazing that they couldn't say no. So really, I guess a lot of lessons along the way, that we need the game changers that are going to take the chance and go, just because that's the way it's always been done doesn't mean it's right, and actually move forward. And interestingly, it was a lady, a really amazing client at the bank that first said yes, that really believed in us. And, you know, it takes multiple stakeholders to accept new and innovation. And that was a really great lesson. From there, we launched, and we've gone to continue to innovate, because, you know, we never wanted to be complacent. And so we launched Agri, which is really interesting in the context of Beck's conversation, because that's very much now moving into climate change data and looking at rural and agri lending. We launched My Velocity because we wanted to democratize the access of the information, and we work today with One Roof. We launched My Rebuild for insurance because we wanted to bring transparency to the replacement cost process, so people could understand how much will it cost to rebuild this house, and built a model that the largest insurer said was better than any model they've ever used before. And we went on to launch, we're going to do a new vertical shortly in the new year. And Data Insight really, you know, continues to work with large businesses that have lots and lots of data, and learned a lot of lessons there where actually, again, we transformed the way you do data to go, well, why can't we do agile analytics? Why can't we do things fast? You don't have time to build the perfect model, and just think about data differently. So it was a really transformative process. So today, I guess, fast forward along the way in New Zealand, we connect, as TG says, you may have heard of us, we do connect the most brokers, valuers, lenders, consumers in our ecosystem. And we're very proud to have 90% market share using our platform for full valuations. So if you want to know what we do, every bank in the world has to validate the value of a property before they can lend money on it. And we help them do that better and faster. We were always building a world-class business. So from New Zealand, we went to Australia, and we were building world-class from day one. So we've had some great success there. And I guess I also love the expression, go big or go home. Although with all the travel, I used to be quite happy to go home. But we decided to go after Australia. We went to Singapore, worked with OCBC, but also straight to India, which is not your normal blonde female entrepreneurial tech journey, to go New Zealand, Australia, and India. And the reason we did that is, again, it was very much these big opportunity and the opportunity to follow our passion and our purpose to democratize the home buying process. And in India, most people don't have a credit score. And there's no reliable data to actually understand the value of property. And so we're incredibly excited that if we could make that process really robust, really reliable, the bank can say yes. And so today we're live in over 600 cities and currently onboarding massive scale, massive lenders that are literally in thousands of cities. And so it's pretty exciting, the journey and where we're going from there. I guess lessons along the way for me, everything's always been about people, the people that believed in me and inspired me, the people in my team. So I have the most phenomenal team, mostly shoulder tapped, of people that got people, and really the people that support you along the way in the journey. And I think Global Woman's a great example of that. It's interesting because one of my technology team is a guy, we were pitching actually a large client, and he said, there's no lady on this. We're not going to get this done, because actually when we look back, and it's interesting, I didn't say it, he did. He said all of the most transformative clients that we have, it's a lady that's driving the change because she wants to, be the change you wish to see, and she's there to make a difference. And it was a really interesting observation, and we really do see that. And so I think groups like Global Woman are just so powerful to go actually be the change you wish to see, and really support everybody and put the ladder down to help everybody else get up there. And I think these ladies are a great example of that. The other major thing that I think for any entrepreneur, it's not just about the people, it's about the purpose and your passion. And you have to love what you're doing, because you are going to have challenges. You're going to have to bulldoze. And I always say, it's never gonna, if it was easy, everyone would be doing it. And how can we do it? What can we do and move forward? And we've really created new in so many ways, and there's been so many moments where it seemed impossible, but with the right people and with the passion and the purpose, we've got through that. And we have to really, just to sum up, say that actually it's because of collaboration, because our clients have explained their problem really closely. Get really close to your problem, just like Cecilia was talking about with 10. If you really understand the problem, then and solve it better than ever before, and just keep going and never stop starting, then you'll be successful. Thanks, guys.
Oh, thanks, Carmen. That was wonderful. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is ask questions, which are a mixture of my questions and the ones that have been coming in from people on the call. So the first one, and anyone can answer this, is you're all serial entrepreneurs, but you must have all had many more ideas and you've turned into businesses. So how do you know, this is a question that's come in from someone on this call, on this webinar, how do you know which ones to follow? So Celia, I'll start with you.
I think the decision became more palpable, when we did my food bag, and then we did 10 than what it was with OP Link, because OP Link kind of just started. And with my food bag, for me, it was a really personal problem. That's how we chose it. It was, what are we having for dinner tonight? And my food bag really answered that problem for me. And I think when James and I assess business opportunities and why we've entered into healthcare is because, we look at something like healthcare and we go, healthcare needs a significant amount of investment and change. And who is better placed to drive this change and this investment than what we are in the group of founders and investors that we have as a group? And so we assess that. And for us, we want to, we're not interested in doing things that are not optimal at scale. We've already learned that we've done small operations, and 10 for us is our biggest opportunity to leave an amazing legacy for generations to come. And that fires me up every day. So that's how we kind of choose. And we get sent lots of opportunities, but if it doesn't fulfill our purpose, which is, to work with people that we really love and who we respect, to do a business that really drives change, and to do it for New Zealand, then we're just not interested. So that's kind of how we've narrowed it down at the end of the day.
Thanks, Ed. Carmen, what about you? You've got 2 going, but you've had lots of other ideas, and you mentioned some sub-verticals. How do you know which ideas to turn into action and which to just sleep on and move on from?
I think we know you've got to know what are you doing that's unique, because otherwise it's not defendable. And I do love Peter Thiel 0 to 1. Why should you be doing it? And is it a big enough opportunity? Because this, I'm in tech and data. There's literally, we could do anything. And so it really has to be something that I'm passionate about. It has to make people's lives better, and it has to be scalable and global, and, totally transformational, because otherwise there's so much happening in our lives, and it is such a race in tech and data. So I think you need the tech and you need the data, but you also need the human-centered experience and the design, and what is the problem that you're solving, and it needs to be a big problem. So for me, it's more actually what I say no to, and really, will you be amazing at it? So why should you be doing it?
Okay, thank you. And Rhonda, how do you choose what to turn into action and put your time into?
When I invented my dubbing software, I was owning a recording studio. I pivoted from recording music, which was, people weren't coming to studios to record their music anymore, into technology and post-production. So again, I grew up in a time where, and my mother certainly did, where she was punished for speaking Māori. We weren't brought up with the Māori language. And so again, being brought up, having to walk that road as mixed race children, learning Māori language in the 70s, 80s just wasn't there. It wasn't there for us. So what I started to see was, in working with other people's content, that I could produce it better, I could make better stories, and that led to the producing part. But also, how could I give those who don't have their language access to it in a really, in an intelligent and an educative and entertaining way? And that started my journey. Now, this was in the early 90s, and Apple hadn't really, come out. In fact, I remember sending my first email. It was, that long ago. So I had to wait for technology to catch up with my idea. So it actually has taken 12 years to create this product. And now we're licensed all over the world. Is it the Squid series that's on now? Voice Cue, my dubbing software, has been used in the dubbing of that.
Squid Games.
Yeah. And so it's about giving others access to their language where they miss out on, or where the transliteration of hearing something in English doesn't work for an Arabic language speaker, for an Inuit language speaker, and Aboriginal, Māori, and then you get into dialects, all of that. So it was the purpose. My niece would come home from Kohanga Reo and come home to a non-Māori speaking household. So she actually stopped speaking Māori when she left the school grounds. So she came out into another world. So it was that in reverse as well. So a lot of what I do is I look at it, what is the social purpose behind this? And then I just hang on for dear life and go for it.
I'll come back to that thought. Bex, how about you? How do you choose? What of your ideas becomes actions? How do you filter them? How do you choose?
It's such a hard one, and I do have a million ideas a day, which completely exhausts everyone who works with me. But I'm with Rhonda. I think it comes down to purpose, and it's something I've been reflecting on a lot recently. Is you give up so much as an entrepreneur. I think Carmen said it. You give up your friendships. A whole lot of stuff has to go on hold. You give up your exercise for time, and it's your baby. And then when you've got your own children as well, and you're juggling those two, all I had in my life for the last sort of 4 or so years was family and work. And so I could only do that if there was purpose behind it. I can only justify it because of the impact that I'm making, and hopefully leaving a better legacy behind, and being that mum that flies in late to everything. And so that for me is a really big thing. I also think it's really important, and it's not always the case, but we were really lucky when we started Better Packaging, and that I had a connection into e-commerce, and so I got to use all of those networks. And I think that's why a part of why we had such great growth is I could just connect into all of that and really leverage that. And you learn with each company you have. So when we started Better Packaging, I just took all of the learnings from Starship and applied it. And I think you can have the same framework of your values and the way you want to treat your team and the way you want to treat your suppliers, regardless of what the business is. And you can put that on any business you want. It doesn't matter what it is, the values can be the same. And I think that's really important as well.
Okay, thank you. Okay, what I want to ask you, this is also a question that's come in. Words of advice that you've got for people on the call who are salary earners, and what words of advice do you have about taking the plunge to become an entrepreneur? I mean, it's not for everyone. How do you know whether this is the sort of thing that you should be doing, and how do you go about doing it? Carmen, let's start with you.
Sure. I think, if you're going to do it, you have to have a fire in your belly to problem solve. And I guess it's interesting seeing a lot of startups now that the first thing they do is kind of raise money. And I always felt, well, I've got to prove it first before I can take someone else's money. How can I do that? If I'm not backing it with my own, how can I ask someone else for? So I think you've got to actually really just be so passionate. And you also got to decide, what are you willing to give up and what are you not? So really your values and what are you willing to compromise and what are you not? Because you know what, if people look at people that are successful and it's blood, sweat and tears, you see the shiny and the rewards are there. But if you're willing to work hard and never give up, there's tremendous rewards. I could never do anything else, but you have to be willing to put in the work. It's not something for nothing. So what are you willing to give up and what are you not? And as a mother, this is a really important question. And I don't want to do a long answer, but I learned that lesson. I was in India for a big meeting on the Monday, on Sunday when it was Mother's Day. And I had a little cry in my room seeing everybody's posts on Facebook with their kids because I had Mother's Day on the Friday because I had to be there. Or, when you miss that event, but also what are you not willing to give up? And, actually saying, well, if I'm here, I'm going to the cross country and driving across town and breaking a speed limit and parking in the loading bay and running in a cream suit because whoops, I didn't look, I was at the cross country, and actually being there, go darling, mummy's here, and then driving all the way back to Auckland. So from Waimaku. So what are you willing to give up and what are you not? And be really clear on that. And then you really just have to have that fire in your belly.
Great answer, Carmen. I'm going to throw to Celia next because I know she's thought very deeply about what she's prepared to give up and not prepared to give up. So Celia, words of advice for young people, young women thinking about becoming an entrepreneur.
I think it's awesome and really admirable that so many people kind of look at entrepreneurship as a career pathway. But I do also want to urge a bit of warning. Like I totally agree with Carmen. Like there's so much work that goes into this process and there's so much sacrifice and there's no guarantee of success. And, not everyone is built for entrepreneurship. Not everyone should be an entrepreneur. In fact, some people, a much better place to contribute to entrepreneurship as employees. So you just have to think about where you sit, what your risk appetite is like, what your emotional resilience is like, and how you handle good times and bads. And it's been a really sad week in the New Zealand entrepreneurial community with Jack Miller's death at the start of the week. And I think it's a reminder for all of us around, reaching out to people and making sure that we're well supported. So I urge a level of caution in this because, there are so many times in our career where we could have just fallen flat on our faces and never gotten up again. And it would have been really hard for us to reboot. We put everything on the line. James and I acquired, credit card debt at times when we had to pay our staff salaries and IPLink because we just didn't have the financials to support ourselves. And so that was really hard. And then I think, Theresa, you said to us at one point when we actually called you and told you that we were going to resign as CEOs of My Food Bag, and you said, well, what are you going to do? Because you're totally unemployable. And so that was your response, I think, at the time. You're not going to go off and do, you're going to have to go off and do your own thing again. So yeah, unemployable it is. But look, it's not for everyone. And I think we do have to be really mindful of that and not build up this hyperbole in terms of how amazing it is, because it's not many times. And look, I've been really lucky that I have a husband that walks this road with me, beside me every day of the week. And when we have downtimes, we talk them through together. And so, I really recommend people to really think twice and make sure you've got a really good support network if you head down this path.
Bex, have you got a few comments in this matter?
Yeah, look, I totally agree with what Carmen and Cecilia have both said. It's not glamorous, and you will have some of your lowest days and your highest days, and quite often they might happen within an hour of each other. And I think you have to be incredibly resilient and to learn from your mistakes. Like, we have just made so many mistakes, and in the early days they would flatten us and we're like, well, this is the end, and now it's almost like, oh yay, mistakes, we're going to learn from this and we're going to be better, and how are we going to take that forward? So I think you have to be really comfortable with that and with the uncertainty, because if you're in a new industry, quite often it's never been done before, so the path hasn't been there. So you have to be really comfortable with that. And I think also you've got to have you've got to be quite confident to take those knocks head on. And the other thing I would also say is, I think a lot of people go into it, and I know this with our first business, it was like, oh yeah, we'll do this for a couple of years and then we'll jump out. But it's not going to be a couple of years. It's 6, 10, 15 years. There's a really big commitment when you start that business. So I think you've also got to look at where you're going to be further down the track and what you'll be doing.
Okay, Rhonda, would you like to comment on this? And perhaps you might want to comment on a question that's just come in relating to this conversation. And it's really, is there too much emphasis on driving young people to entrepreneurship? There are some accelerators, etc. Are we in danger of encouraging people to leap in before they really know this is what they want to do?
Yeah, I mean, they're talking about the new gig economy, aren't they? And different choices that you have also from a career perspective. I think it's more accessible nowadays to jump around in 5 different careers if you want. But I agree with the the rest of our wahine here that it's not for everybody, and you can't find a job spec for an entrepreneur. There's no JD for it. It's something that's in you that you cannot shake, and you have just this belief. I mean, first time I fell over, hit a brick wall, lost everything. My sister, who was working for me at the time, said, Ron, give it up. And I looked at her and I said, I can't. I can't. And I held on for dear life, and we're good. But I couldn't even spell the word entrepreneur, let alone get what it was, because I was just doing what I felt was right for me in my life in that moment, for me and my family.
Really, really powerful comments from all of you. I would just like to add that there's a key theme here. I too am unemployable. And if when I did my business degree, I've been able to go and work for any of you 3 wahine as an entrepreneur, I would have chosen that over going to a corporate. And I remember a time a few years ago when IBM's had their first female CEO. But no one ever talked about her, because by that time, Sheryl Sandberg, and she wasn't even the founder. She was just a fast follower. Woman entrepreneurs had become cool. And so I think there is a danger in that now becoming the glamorous thing, but you know it. You can't not do it. You have the calling, you can't not do it. And you're restless and can't sit still working for someone else. If you like the pace that many organizations work at, and you want to consider time, you need a lot of time by yourself, and you just really got to ask yourself, do you want to be an entrepreneur? And Jake's death this week is a very timely reminder that if you do this path, which is tremendously rewarding, you've got to be well set up personally and professionally with support, because it does have dips, and not many of us in our 20s are resilient enough. We get that as we go along in life. And that actually was a question that's come in, which I'll ask that question of the panel and then ask the next question that's come in. So that question was, how do you find the funding, the supports, the communities, the networks to make this successful? So Carmen, I'll start with you.
I think it's really surround yourself with people smarter than you. But also be careful who you listen to, because everyone's got an opinion. It's like if you've been pregnant, everyone has an opinion, not necessarily a good or an informed one. So I think, decide who you're going to listen to, and really, you need to make sure that you reach out to your network. So there were some great people that have been amazing along my journey, and that I go back to, that I respect and that I admire and that I listen to. I think the second part of that question is, how do you kind of look after yourself? And, you know, it's actually giving yourself a break. And I think, TG, I loved your piece when you came out about that, to share, you know, the stress that you had, because, you know, you can't do everything. And actually recognizing there's different phases in your life and giving yourself a break, and, you know, making sure that you kind of have your recalibrate moments and your recharge moments, and you know what are the things that help you do that reset. So for me, I live in a lifestyle block in the country. I sauna every night. I just create little moments sitting down with my husband and my children each night, and that gives me my energy back. And so really recognize when you need to give yourself a break, because you just can't do everything. You can't do the running and the exercise and be everything to everybody. So yeah, I think it's actually surround yourself with people better than you and recognize when you need to, what you need.
Thanks, Carmen. Bex, I'm going to go to you now, because you've chosen a unique path in terms of investors, all female investors, all committed, the really true meaning of patient private capital. So I'll let you speak to that, because I think that's been a key part of you having the time to create a much bigger potential impact in the world.
Yeah, we were incredibly fortunate to be a CEO venture finalist in, I think it was 2018 now.
It was.
And that was, and it's in line with what I was going to say to the other question actually, is there's so many funds and there's so many ways to access money through grants, government grants and funds and things like that. And we've been incredibly resourceful in doing that. And SHEO was one of those. We got an interest-free loan for 5 years. But what we also got from that, which we weren't expecting, was this sort of space to actually take the time to go, what do we want our investors to look like? And so we literally wrote up this big spreadsheet of all of the people who were approaching us asking if we wanted investment and all of their values and everything that they could bring to the table. And it was like this big matchmaking criteria. And where we landed is, we actually just don't, we don't want to be putting money back into the pockets of people who have got heaps of money. We want it to be going into this sort of perpetual fund, and we want it to be really patient capital. And we've been incredibly fortunate in that we've got investors who have these perpetual funds that any money that gets made goes back in to other women impact businesses working in the waste space. And I think because we had that, you know, we were given the space to do that, we were able to do that. Rather than going down that traditional sort of VC route. And, you know, we're starting to raise again, and we're raising in the new year, and we were just on a call and a VC said to us, oh, no VCs in America will invest in you because you're a B Corp company. And usually in the past, probably 10 years ago, I would have been like, oh my God, was B Corp the right thing to do? But now it's like, well, then we don't want them to invest in us. You know, it goes both ways. It's not just whether we're good enough, it's whether they're good enough for us. And I think the networks have really given me the confidence to say, no, you don't line up with our values, so we don't want to work with you.
One of the things that the SHEO loan did for better packaging, of course, was give you a year in which you didn't have to sell down any equity. So by the time you did sell down, you still own nearly 100% of the company, but you were raising at 10 million rather than at 1 million. And then the next raise, you know, so that has really been a part of it.
Does 10% of our business.
Yeah.
And, you know, when we're looking to raise in this next round, that's chunky. And it also means that we've got that, you know, we've still got that majority share, which for me, it's not about the money, it's about having control in that mission.
Yeah.
Being able to stay true to our mission.
I'm going to get Celia to speak next, because this aspect of founders selling too early, particularly women in New Zealand, I think it's a real problem. Like, you know, for women to create wealth for themselves and to do good in the world, they've got to find smart ways to bring in investors, but also to hang on to control in their own companies. So, Celia, would you like to talk about that and your relentless passion to get my food bag to cash flow positive as soon as possible so that we all had choice?
Yeah, I mean, and actually that was James's focus as well in particular. But for us, you know, I love what Carmen initially said. I mean, people are raising too early and, you know, taking money too quickly without actually maybe having a business idea and actually validating what they're doing. And, you know, we were really proud. I mean, in OPLink, we never took in external capital. James and I just kept funding it and kept making sure that we could do what we said we were going to do. So when we came around to my food bag, you know, it felt like, I remember having this phone call with Theresa when we'd pitched her the idea for my food bag. And I actually still get quite sweaty saying this because I remember calling her and asking for $160,000 at the time, I think it was, to invest in my food bag. And And it felt like the most amount of money I'd ever asked someone for in my entire life. In fact, it was the most amount of money I'd ever asked anyone for. And I had no idea what we would do or what we'd spend it on, but I knew we needed an X amount. And in the end, as a group, us, Nadia and Carlos and Theresa raised $250,000 to create my food bag, which I think is still, I mean, my food bag never went to raise again. My food bag has only been raised once, and that was the $250,000 of initial shareholder money that went in back in 2012. Which is phenomenal for a business with that level of growth. And, you know, we had a really relentless focus on making my food bag accelerate from that zero when we started to becoming a significant New Zealand business of scale. It's been some really good lessons for Tend when we went to found, you know, a healthcare startup, because what we realized really early on was that to be able to make a big impact in a category like healthcare, you actually can't shoestring it. Even if you're the best entrepreneurs, you cannot shoestring this category. It's not shoestringable like we did with my food bag, like we did with OPL Link. And, you know, when we presented the business case to Theresa for Tend, you know, we were talking about, you know, something that had no value yet. It was a piece of paper when we were talking about evaluations of several $1 million for us to get started as a group. And again, you know, you have to be able to align yourself with people that share your values, where you will have each other's back. And James and I and Theresa go into business together because we love doing business together. We love challenging each other. We love working alongside each other, and we're part of a team, right? And so we've never kind of looked at each other as, you know, we've never, when you're looking for money, you don't just look for someone that's going to bring money. You're bringing for someone that's going to bring skill set and all the other attributes so that you together can build a successful business, right? And look, that's been a lot of learnings along the way, you know, and we're really happy at where we're at today.
Thank you, Seth. Can you just ask another question that's just come in? Where would you start as an entrepreneur in terms of learning more about finding investment? How you were lucky, you met me early on, your husband was several years older, a bit more experienced, but if you're a young woman entrepreneur today, where would you start? How would you find out more?
Look, I think there's actually quite a lot of networks nowadays to actually have these conversations with. You've got the archangels, you've got CEO, you can reach into, I mean, everyone in New Zealand's basically like a coffee away from a conversation with you, and I find that quite appealing about this country. So, you know, ask for conversations with people, do your research, but I do really encourage and urge people who are in that phase of entrepreneurship to actually build a sustainable business model, you know, and actually build some value, because otherwise you might just end up giving away too much too early in the cycle. And so, you know, we founded OPL Link off $500. You know, it was close to a $7 million turnover business when we sold OPL Link. You know, my food bag, it's been widely publicized in terms of the revenue at the time. You know, we built my food bag to 130 million in terms of revenue when we sold our initial stake to Waterman Capital. You know, like, this is, you don't want to be selling out too early. So you need to be able to have an idea for where you want to get to and what that's going to cost you before you give it up. And then you have to have a really good understanding, just like Beck says, about who you're bringing around the board table. Who are these people? Do you align on value? Like, and all of those things are really foundational to the success for the next phase of the business, right?
Thanks, Seth. Rhonda, going back to the question, just in case you've forgotten the original question, which I deviated a bit from, it was, how do you find funding, networks and communities to support your journey?
So mine's not so recent, but in the late 90s, early 2000s, there wasn't that much around. And with my product, not everyone saw that not having access to your language was a problem. I'll just read the subtitles. What about those who don't read? You know, that sort of thing. So, so we had no big investors. And going to, but then having said that, I took small chunks and I wouldn't do that again. You know, like 25 here, 30 there, 100 there. But you chew through it as quick as it hit the bank account, you know, and so it was just getting chipped away. In terms of, and like the NZTEs, again, getting back to the race thing, you know, you were sent straight to the Māori department who had no power and no money. And being a woman in technology and post-production, are you kidding me? You know, it's like, go away, little, you know, go away, lady. You don't know what you're doing. And so I did give up too much too soon. But you know, you make the call on the day and you do what you got to do. In terms of, I see a question here around mentors. And I got an advisory board very early on, but I didn't know how to use them. And they didn't really know my business, nor did they share my passion for it as well. So I didn't choose wisely, and I don't know if I had got some that were really in sync with me, people who were really in sync with me, would that have worked? I don't know, but it didn't work for me. And because you can go head down, ass up, can't you? You just go. And you don't stop and just have a little listen now and then, you know. So that's been my experience.
Carmen and Celia, you've both had advisory boards in your time. Would you like to share some observations on what's good practice, what works, what doesn't work? Carmen, you first.
I think, you know, they've got to be aligned culturally and with your values. And so that's the most important thing. It's like you're getting married when you bring on an investor and, you know, you think very carefully because, you don't want to get divorced, imagining. So I think you have to be really careful about who shares your values and who shares your vision and who's going to empower you and add value to you. And I think that's really, really important. And we were very lucky. Actually, Jake introduced me to my investor. So, you know, it seems to be he's the topic du jour, but he was such a connector. And that was the power of the network and knowing people that you know that have the same values and that understand you and that can really recommend similar people that are the same alignment and vision. So that's really important. I think for an advisory board, you don't know what you don't know. So try and look for complementary, but also different skill sets. So for example, my husband and I are polar opposites. You know, he's the calm one, I'm the crazy one, and the yin and the yang comes together to balance each other out. And so, you know, I hate looking at numbers, even though I'm in data. So I brought on somebody that's a trusted financial person to my board, because if I don't get my numbers right, and he's still on my board today, and he's still, you know, just even though we've used external agencies and parties. So get the people where you think you don't have that skill set, and also recognize you're growing. So the people that are supporting you or that you listen to also need to grow with you, or you'll need to actually change as you scale up. You know, today we've got over 100 staff, and what our problems that we talk through or that we need guidance are different than when we had 5 staff. So make sure that you find people that have the experience, because you're trying to climb to the top of the mountain, you've got no map, and you're trying to avoid all the dead ends, and you're literally just going blind. So if they've worked through a hectare pathway where you've been before, then I will, you know, happy days. So and you know, I guess then an advisory board, you still, your gut, and I think especially in women, your intuition is still your guiding light. Because there's been instances where I've disagreed with everybody on my board and I've been right, and there's other instances where I'm like, well, actually no, that's a different view and I should consider that. So that's kind of something that I think you learn along the way, but most of the time your gut is right.
Celia, would you like to make any comments on this topic?
Totally. Again, totally agree with Carmen. Love you, Carmen. Anyway, I was going to say, I'll tell you guys briefly about how I met Theresa. I was at a speaking engagement like this, but not via Zoom, in person, which was really exciting. And she was talking about her book and she was launching a book, and I went up to her after that, and I learned a couple of lessons from that, from an advisory board. And the first one is be brave and ask the person that most inspires you, that you think you align with, you know, like you go up and you ask them and you have that conversation. So I was brave and I went and I asked Theresa to join OPLink's advisory board, which was really random because Theresa doesn't have children, you know, like, but I really felt connected to her when I listened to her speaking. And TG then told me 2 things, which I've learned from at the time, which was, well, actually it was threefold. It was, the first one thing was, I want full transparency of the business. Like, I'm not going to be involved in your business. Don't just show me the pretty stuff. I want to actually have full transparency of what you're doing, how you're doing it. I want to see full financials. The second one was, you know, you guys are going to have to be good listeners and take advice, right? And the third one was, and if I'm doing this, you need to pay me, because getting people's time free is bullshit, to be completely frank. You actually have to pay really good advisors. And that was one of the best decisions, categorically our best business decision that James and I ever made, was to go into business with Theresa, because it has shaped the three of us to who we are and where we are today. And without each other, we would not be where we are, right? So that is the optimum dream outcome, is to get to this position where we've got to together, and something that we're all three really proud of. So be brave, provide full transparency, listen to your board, because if you're not listening to them, why do you have them? And then pay them. Boom.
Boom indeed, Cecilia. Boom indeed. Okay, so it's 1:43. We're going to stop right on 2:00. So the comments coming in show that everyone is really feeling inspired by you guys, your candor, insights, advice, authenticity. I just want to pick up a couple of themes that have come through in the conversation, and we'll go to Bex first. It's back on this. It really strikes me that all of you have been so successful, and yet, unlike me, you are mothers and you're younger than me. And I feel like of the Helen Clark generation, where we both of us, Helen Clark and I, talked publicly about the fact that we could not have done what we did, become Prime Minister, run Telecom, and had 4 kids, and yet you guys have. So I just want to dive back into this again, starting with you, Bex. I don't really like the word balance, but how do you manage being a whole person when you're driven by this thing that you cannot not do, change the world, but you've got these wonderful children and partner that you value? So how do you, at a practical level, do you pay for cleaners? What do you have to tell yourself to make it all work? Can you share that with everyone on the call?
And look, it's something I'm still learning. It's one of the hardest parts of this business, because not only did I, as a child, want to run my own business, but I also wanted to be a mother. And it was always, I want to be a mother and I want to be a stay-at-home mum. And I was a stay-at-home mum for a couple of years. And then when I was pregnant with my third, I just started dabbling into things, and it kind of grew. So I didn't sort of make that conscious decision to do one or the other, if that makes sense. But the balance I struggle with every day, because I want to do both of it. You know, they're both my babies, and I love both sides of it. So I think in the early days I did too much myself, like cleaning the house and not getting nannies, and I've just had to learn to let go of some things. And I sort of always say to my team, what are the things that only you can do, and what are the other things that other people can do and can backfill you, even if it takes them longer? And so I really focus on that, and it's like, is it best use of my time to be doing X, Y, and Z in the house, and can I get someone else to do it? And it's also the same in the business, because you can't do everything as you grow. So I'm very focused on that. I also make a huge effort to have a sort of a couple of hours every day with the kids where I switch off. So at the moment, with lockdowns and things, I've sort of set aside 2 hours a day where it's just 100% kids. I put my screens, I block out that time, and nothing comes in between it. And that seems to be working, but it's just something that I juggle with. So if anyone has the magic answer, I would love to hear it. But I think you do have to let go of a lot of things and not be super mum. And yeah, hopefully that's your washing and all those things that you don't enjoy.
Thanks, Bex. Carmen, you've touched on this already, but maybe you've got more you'd like to share.
Yeah, there is no balance, is probably what I would say. And I guess it's just, what are you not willing to compromise? And, you know, from the start, I've paid for anything that I could pay for. You know, being in lockdown was interesting because my children had to learn what house cleaning was. And I guess it's really recognizing that you're going through phases in your life, and you can't replace your children growing up, but you can't do everything when you're building the business. So it's, you know, for us, that dinner hour, that, you know, being present, no phones at the table, and actually sitting down. I mean, I would carry on when they went to sleep at 8 o'clock at night, and that was fine because they're sleeping, and it doesn't matter that I don't watch TV. So it's actually just working out what works for you and your rhythm, and really actually outsourcing. And my mom's amazing, and says to me all the time, stop and smell the roses, because I'm so driven. And also, you know, they'll remember that you played with them, they won't remember you had a tidy house. So it's actually realizing what you need to let go, and you just can't think about those things, because you just got to give yourself that break, that, you know, it's messy, but it's okay. I think the last thing I'll say is celebrate the success with your kids so they know why you're doing what you're doing. So 3 of my 4 children are females and girls, and just empowering them and seeing their attitudes now that they can do this and why do I do this. So we had our 5-year party with all of our clients and I had my kids there and there was a lot of tears. But you know, I was like, well, wow, they're like, all these people are here for mummy and this is what mummy did. So making sure they're part of that journey, because it's amazing how much they understand the rewards, the sacrifices, and then they're part of that. Then you're all together and that's really magic.
Thanks so much, Carmen. And Celia, I saw you nodding as Carmen was speaking.
Yeah, I definitely wanted to come off mute, and I kind of want to give Carmen a hug as well, because I get emotional about this too. But yeah, you've already touched on a lot of the points that I would have made, Bex and Carmen. The other thing that I would be is I'm fiercely transparent with my team about what I'm doing. Like I haven't quite got to getting on the phone and showing them me breastfeeding yet, but I'm getting there almost. But, you know, like I plan things around my family, and I'm actually quite ruthless with that. I don't run global businesses. We run a business in New Zealand. So I've got the privilege of being able to work hours here locally. And back in the day when we ran OPL Link, it was really hard because we worked European hours often. But I'm grateful for the fact that I'm here and we're doing it here. So my recommendations are aligned to Carmen, pay for things that you can pay for. You know, we've got a phenomenal housekeeper that keeps me sane, and I don't pretend like I do everything. I've got an amazing husband who is also a co-parent and who I work alongside every single day in my family. And, you know, championing that in front of our staff, you know, them being able to see, you know, like the baby is often on our leadership calls right now, right? Although he's on a really good routine, sometimes he wakes up. Yesterday, and I have 2, I'm on a couple of boards, obviously with Tend, I'm on the Pi Funds board, Anna Maria is our chair there, and, you know, I told her, look, I cancel a 5 p.m. meeting because it's chaos at our house, and she, of course, changed it for me because she knows what it's like, right? So don't apologize for the things that you have to do as a mum and as a parent, and particularly not of a newborn. And so, but also be grateful for those who enable it. And, you know, yesterday we were in the middle of the board call, you know, Charlie got up, I have to breastfeed him, and Theresa's like, let us all see Charlie. And I'm like, oh my God, he's probably going to cry now because he needs to be fed. But, you know, that welcoming aspect. And I think the more that we show that this is the life that we live, that we're integrating our children into our life, like Carmen talked about, the more that will become socially acceptable. And the better it will be for us, for our mental health, for our children, for our wider whānau. Like it's about that integration, and that's what I believe in.
Thank you, Celia. And Rhonda, do you have any observation, anything on this matter? I know that you had your children a bit earlier, but, you know, do you think it's got easier now, or do you think it was more difficult in your time, or it's really still a difficult juggling act?
Well, I was a solo mum, so, and a teenage mother. So as soon as she was born, I was working 2-3 jobs. And just doing whatever I had to do to keep the 2 of us going. And in fact, at one point I would go down to the local housey, you know, bingo hall, and I would set up the tables and clean up afterwards, and then they would give me cards to play. And if I won, payday. There's no benefits or anything. And I did. I won $50 one time. That kept us going for weeks. So I've always been, you know, always worked, just always have since I was 13. But work-life balance. So my daughter's, she works in mental health, AOD now, and she was doing her Bachelor in Health Science at the time. And her tutor said, oh, would your mum come along and talk to us about work-life balance? And Vanessa go, nah, my mum sucked at that. So I didn't go talk about it. But then many years later, I was having a sukkah bubba moment with her, and I said, I'm just so sorry. I was just so busy, you know, I neglected you. She goes, no, Mama, that was us. That was you and me. And now she says, Mum, you're always 20, 30 years before your time. You know, and it's made our adult relationship very, very rich. Yeah, and I treasure it.
In the last 10 minutes or so, I really would like to just ask could be a bit of a controversial question, I suppose. And Celia and Rhonda, you both touched on racism and sexism. And really, do you think that that's getting any better? And what is the best way to deal with it? So Rhonda, the floor is yours.
Yeah, oh, that's a biggie, isn't it? Is it getting any better? Not from where I sit, nah. And again, it's a mixed race journey. So it's not cut and dry. It's not black and white, pardon the pun. It's a brown journey. And I think that we've got to really be talking about this. I've got great nieces and nephews now who are Samoan Māori English. My grandchildren are Cook Island Māori English. And I don't, is it getting any better? Nah, look, you know, people are going to find anything. If it's not your color, it's your sex. If it's not your sex, it's you're too short, you wear glasses, you don't. Yeah, I don't see it into it. Do I see it, you know, ruining the world or whatever? Look, you know, it has from time immemorial, and it will, and it's just up to us to keep ourselves safe and bring our children up differently, to be more open to diversity in so many ways. Yeah, starts at home.
Celia, you've definitely suffered from the young blonde Swedish woman. What could she know about this syndrome? Do you think it's getting better?
Occasionally I still suffer from it. I think it's about picking your tribe a little bit as well. Nowadays, you know, I just don't put up with fools. I think, you know, 10 years ago it might have hurt me, but nowadays, you know, you actually you grow in strength as a person, and you're able to articulate your view, and you've got real substance, and you stand by that. And you know, the investment scene in New Zealand and globally is still very much white, stale and male, and I hate to say it really is. And you know, we have to lead that from the front and lead that change. And TJ, that's why I'm so grateful that you're leading change with things like CEO, right? And your investment. I mean, I know clearly Theresa is one of my best friends, and the amount of things that she does to lead female investment, to put women at the heart of everything that she does is phenomenal, right? And we didn't have this 15 years ago when we started out with OPLink, and that is a huge difference. And I'm also nowadays not prepared to put up with the bullshit that I used to put up with. So calling it out, you know, and really making wise choices about who you surround yourself with, because those people are the ones that at the end of the day help dictate your success. And if you're not surrounding yourself with people that enrich your life, then tell them to piss off. And that includes investors and people that are in that community. And if they don't think that you're worthy because, you know, at the time I was young, blonde and female, you know, then they can stuff it. But I didn't feel that 15 years ago. It's taken a while to kind of get to where you are now. And so I really encourage that next generation to surround yourself with the people that inspire you, that include you, that grow you, and not pay so much credence to the ones that, you know, credence to the ones that won't, you know.
Thanks, Celia. So I'm really conscious that we've just got a couple more minutes. This is a great community, Global Women, all of you who are part of this. In lockdown last year, actually, I was sent something by Victoria Carter, and it was fantastic. It was historic, and it listed the women. They were mainly wealthy heiresses who'd funded the votes for women in the US. But I'd never seen that written up anywhere. But it just reinforced my view that as women, we have to stand together. I choose to use my money. I invest through a gender lens now. I invest only in female founders. And I'm really encouraging Archangels to set up a bigger fund. They set up a fund, it was only $2 million, that's fine, but that can't lead around, that can't cut big checks. Meanwhile, we do a 1x5 fund, 100 million. That's not gonna, you know, that's mainly gonna be men. So we need to do what we can to lift our voices, whether we're in corporates, whether we're running portfolio lives, as many of us on this call are, in both time and money. And that's why I am giving so much of my time to do this, to be part of Global Women, to try and make a difference, and really encourage all of you to, it's so energizing to be around your own tribe like this. And there are different ways to do things, as Bex talked about. She's chosen to have investors who fit her values and to have all women. And you can choose that. You don't have to just do it the way it's always been done. We can co-create the future together. And indeed, I believe that we must, because if not us, who else? And how will we ever face our daughters? So first of all, just so much thanks to Carmen and to Rhonda and to Bex and to Cecilia. You're probably looking at the column of tributes coming in, and thank you so much for giving up this 90 minutes in your day, because you've chosen to do something. You've chosen to do this and not to do something else, to be with here and to inspire us all and to share practical nuggets of wisdom, but also just the fellowship of knowing that women can make a real difference. So Thank you so much, and thank you to everyone else who's actually on the call. I'm just having a look at how many women it was. We're down to 92 now, but we got to well over 100. So that's good. Holding 92 women for 90 minutes at a lunchtime event just shows you what a special korero it's been. So ngā mihi nui. Have a wonderful afternoon, everybody. Ka kite.
Ka kite.